Okay, so let's get started. Um, I want to say hello, everyone who is joining our second WoEUPSA webinar. We are very excited. We had more than 100 participants the first time, and we're very excited to have our second webinar today. For those who don't know me, my name is Elke Zani Ruttenstock. I recently joined the faculty in St. Louis Children's Hospital, WashU in St. Louis. And I'm very honored to moderate this webinar together with Dr. Carmen Mesas Burgos from Stockholm, and with the incredible help of our Gaia Tamaru from the WoEUPSA administration. And yeah, so it's my great pleasure to introduce you our today's speaker, Dr. Andrea Bischoff, a renowned expert and true leader in pediatric colorectal surgery. Her dedication, passion, and unwavering commitment has significantly advanced the care of children with colorectal and urogenital malformations. But beyond her clinical expertise, Andrea is a powerhouse woman, a mentor, and an advocate for others, particularly women in surgery. Andrea and I have known each other, I think, for more than 12 years now, crossing paths at different meetings, always reconnecting, always exchanging ideas, and always supporting one another. And I should have listened to Andrea way earlier when she said, you need to come to the US. She is not only a brilliant surgeon and researcher, but also a genuine friend and an inspiring force who constantly lifts those around her. She believes in empowering others, fostering a culture of collaboration, and ensuring that women in our field find their voice, take up space, and succeed. Since February 2016, Andrea, alongside her husband, Dr. Alberto Peña, and their twins, they have been living and working in Denver, Colorado, where they founded the International Center for Colorectal and Urogenital Care of the Children's Hospital in Colorado. And through her leadership, she transformed the landscape of pediatric colorectal surgery, not just in the US, but worldwide, improving patient outcomes and mentoring the next generations of surgeons. Today, she will share her personal and professional journey in pediatric surgery through her talk, which is entitled My Journey as a Woman in Pediatric Surgery, a Lens of Perspective, Self-Reflection, Heart, and Wisdom. Please join me in warmly welcoming my friend and an extraordinary woman leader, Dr. Andrea Bischoff. Andrea, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Elke. I have to say, I don't think I ever had such a good introduction before. I will keep this forever, and I'm glad it's recorded. You just already made my day. So whatever comes from here, it's already extra.
It's my pleasure.
So can you see my slide, one of them?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you very much. I am truly honored to be here today with all of you. I'm going to start with a quote from Ruth Ginsburg, who was a Supreme Court judge here in the United States and a true fighter for gender equality. Real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. I hope throughout the lecture you will all realize that we have made a lot of progress, but there is still much more to do. The second woman that I would like to emphasize is Marie Curie, whom I'm a big fan. She graduated top of her class in high school. But at that time in Poland, universities did not accept women. Despite the financial hardship that her family had, she managed to go to France and she attended the University of Paris. So thanks to the fact that she did not accept the standards imposed by her country towards women, she then became the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, the first person to win a Nobel Prize twice, and the first woman to become professor at the University of Paris. And the last woman that I want to mention is Billie Jean King. She was born with natural talent for sports. She was very good in baseball. But at that time, she realized there was no professional female baseball teams. And because of that, she ended up going to tennis, because tennis and golf were the two first sports to have professional competitions for women. She won many awards, many championships, but she realized that women were paid less than men, that there was no publicity for women in sports. There were no scholarships at university for women in competitive sports. So in 1973, Bobby Riggs, who was the #1 tennis player at that time, male, who was a bully, by the way, invited her for a match because he truly believed that there was no way that a woman could ever compete with him. Well, this was known as the Battle of the Sexes, the biggest tennis match the world had ever seen. And Billie Jean won the game. She knew how much that meant for all the women watching that match. And I wonder if you know what were the first words that Bobby Riggs told her when he congratulated her. He said, "I underestimated you." And I think we as women have felt that, how often we are underestimated. So those three women, they will help us understand perspective over time, how things were at their time and how things are now in our time. Obviously, the challenges are different. But another way to gain perspective is by traveling, or in my case, by being born in one country and then moving into another country. So I was born in Brazil, a country, an underdeveloped country in South America, and I moved to United States. So when I was 17 years old, my father, who was in the military, was transferred to work in the Inter-American College of Defense in the United States. So our family moved, and my sister and I attended the University of Maryland. That's where I started pre-med. Then we returned to Brazil, and I officially started medical school at Brasilia University. In Brazil, the good elementary, middle, and high schools are private and expensive, but the good universities are government universities and they are free. Now, as you can imagine, the people that approve in the exam to get into the free university are the ones in which the parents could afford to pay education early in life. It's truly an unfair system. But life, unfortunately, is unfair. And if we think that the most important determining factor for survival during the newborn period is the country where you were born. Now, I want you all to think, what have we done to be born in a certain country? The reality is we did nothing. It was a matter of luck or lack of it. So then our family moved. When we were back in Brazil, I was trying to approve the credits of the 2 years of pre-med that I did in the United States, which resulted in a difficult task because in the United States, we spend fewer hours in school physically, lots of homework, but because of that, we get very little credit hours. In Brazil, it's completely the opposite. We spend all day at the university, little to no homework, and lots of credit hours. So because of that, the 2 years that I'd done in the United States were only equivalent to 6 months in Brazil. But because of that, during my first semester in medical school, I ended up with a lot of free time. And I really wanted to be at the hospital. I was that person that dreamed about being a doctor. So I decided to start shadowing the hospital. At that time, I knew I wanted to work with children, but I didn't have any doctors in my family. I didn't know pediatric surgery existed. By a matter of luck, my free time matched the free time of the pediatric surgery team. So as a first-year medical student, I start hanging with the team of pediatric surgery. And I found my tribe. This is Professor Paulo Tubino. He is the person why I became a pediatric surgeon. I think from him, what I learned was to give the same amount of time for any patient during rounds. Sometimes we could have a patient that had a tiny lesion in the skin and was admitted for social reasons, or we can have a patient with Wilms tumor. But for that family, that tiny lesion is a huge problem. So we really have to dedicate time to our patients. And the other thing that always impressed me was his capacity to always inspire those around him. He would teach medical students countlessly and endlessly. This was my one and only publication when I left Brazil as a fully graduated pediatric surgeon. So I actually did this publication when I was a medical student with my other professor, Dr. Mércia Rocha. This was her PhD thesis. And when you are in an underdeveloped country, there is no money set aside for research. You don't have protected time. So we actually operated on these rats during Carnival, which is a very important and festive holiday in Brazil. We had to pay for our own sutures. And to give you an idea of how unexperienced we are, if you look carefully, my name is the senior author. So I was the medical student. And the reason why my name is on that spot is because the names were set in order of importance, and I was the least important one. I did my general surgery training in Brazil, in Hospital Universitário de Brasília, and the salary for a resident in Brazil does not allow us to live independently. So you either could live in a room offered by the hospital with a shared kitchen, or you lived with your parents. That was the reality in our country. So I was lucky because my parents lived very close to the hospital. So medical school, general surgery, and pediatric surgery, I lived with my parents. When we were on call, there was a tiny TV, no cable TV, a couch in terrible conditions, and we had a room for residents with bunk beds that we had to share. We had to bring our own bed sheet and pillows, and we could hear when the patient was coming just by the loud noise of the printer. We knew, oops, there is a patient coming. And then the person would knock on our door and say general surgery or internal medicine. There was no cafeteria for most of the time that I was on training. We had to either bring our food or order our food. There was a restaurant, but the food was terrible. Very importantly, nurses were paid very bad. So they had to work 24-hour shifts throughout the week. So at night, they really wanted to sleep. So if you were worried about the patient, you had to go and check vital signs by yourself, urinary output by yourself, because whatever was written at that time, there was no electronic documentation, was simply not true. I think the most important eye-opening experience during my career has been doing general surgery in the same hospital where I did pediatric surgery fellowship. The reason was I thought I was a very hardworking resident. And I had the impression that when I left general surgery to move on to pediatric surgery, that the program would suffer. I was wondering, how are they going to survive without me? Like, who is going to do everything that I do? And it reminds me of the story of the rooster that crows every morning, and he thinks that because of that, the sun rises. So one day, the rooster went to a party, drank too much, didn't wake up, and to his surprise, the sun rose. And I think that's what happened to me because I was in pediatric surgery and I could see how general surgery was doing extremely well without me. And this is a lesson that I think we should all take it seriously, that there will be no difference before your departure and after your departure. Things will survive and we're not that important. So pediatric surgery in Brazil is a 3-year long, and my professor did not allow us to take vacation during the 3 years, but he allowed us to do a rotation abroad in the last 3 months of our pediatric surgery fellowship. So when I was a first-year fellow, there was a national exam for positions for pediatric surgeons in the government public hospitals in my town. They forgot to put in the rule of who could sit up for the exam that you needed to have already your diploma of pediatric surgery to compete for that position. So as a first-year fellow, I sat for that exam. I approved. So in my first-year fellow, I had guarantee dream job for life. That was very helpful. So as I was planning how I was going to do my rotations at the end of my pediatric surgery fellowship, I sent an email to Alberto, and then he said, why don't you come earlier so you can learn bowel management and we can plan your rotation so it's more, you can make better usage of your time. Miraculously, my professor allowed me to go, and I spent a week during my second year. So during that week in Cincinnati, I was truly impressed with how love and caring Alberto was with his patients. This was a complete different experience that I had previously in the United States. And I thought, that way I could practice in the United States. I was also impressed by the good surgical technique. I had seen the PSARP before because I had taken the course before, but when I saw him closing a colostomy, it blew me away. I was really, really impressed. And that during that week, they invited me for a research fellowship, and I thought it was a good opportunity. I already had a job for life, so I had nothing to lose. So I decided to take the research fellowship. So when I started my research fellowship, research fellows were allowed to scrub in surgery. So I was truly enjoying. Then around 2 months since I was a research fellow, it came the memo that from now on, research fellows are forbidden to scrub. So that was devastating news for me because as a surgeon, it's very hard for us not to operate. So they told me that the only option for me to get back into the surgical field was to take the USMLE's exams and take a clinical fellowship position. I published a lot during my research fellowship, which was great. And I glanced on the book and I thought, I'll have no trouble passing it. So I booked the exam for 1 month after I got the news. Obviously, I failed. So I remember getting the result and crying and being devastated that I failed. And at that time, there was a fellow from Ireland, Dr. Alan Mortel. And he sat at the bench with me and he said, Andrea, the USMLE is a hard exam if you're not from United States. And it's a hard exam if English is not your primary language. but if you study again, I'm sure you can pass it. And I said, okay, I'll give it another try. And then at the same night, I had Alberto, who is not very good in those moments where you need some support. He told me, well, maybe you're not as good as you thought you were. But that was my fuel. I'm like, now I'm going to study and I'm going to pass this exam. So I did it. So when I started the clinical fellowship, the first night that I started my call was the first night that the electronic medical system was installed in the hospital. To say that it was a chaos, it's an understatement. The amount of calls that I got, the amount of pagers, there was not enough time to return the pager or calls. I thought I was not going to survive. And I thought, if this is the real call in the United States, I don't think I can make it. I did it. I survived. That's why I'm here. The other thing that sounds very stupid, but I had zero experience with Excel. And in the United States at that time, they kept the list of patients. There was a huge list in Excel. So in my first call, I messed up the entire list. Now that I've been in the United States for a long time, I can only imagine how the other fellows hated me on that night. And this year when I attend WoEUPSA, I'm gonna apologize to them because I'm sure it was tough for them to fix the list after I messed up so much. The second call night, I was informed that I had to take care of ECMO patients. And when I left Brazil in 2007, there were no ECMO machines in my country. So I had never seen an ECMO machine. So I was desperate. How am I going to take care of a patient if I've never seen a machine? I studied the entire manual as much as I could, but I voiced my concern to everyone. I said, I'm really concerned of me on call taking care of ECMO patients. Of course, the technicians that manage the ECMO machine here in the United States, they are very good. So I survived that too. But very important, when you change from one country to another, medications are different, culture is different, diseases are different. I was very experienced in Chagas disease, but I had zero experience in inflammatory bowel disease. Nurses, different than Brazil that I mentioned that they want to sleep at night. Here, they will call you for everything. They come just for that night shift. They are fresh and they are on top of everything. Attendings are different. Some of them want to be called, others don't want to be called. So as someone coming from another country, you have to learn many things that are different. And you work as hard as you can, trying to fit as much as you can. Now, what has been the perspective from having worked in Brazil and now working in the United States? I would say is the appreciation for being able to work with adequate conditions. This is priceless. And I can tell you many stories, but I'm going to tell you one just to make you realize what is the perspective that I'm talking about. So when I was a pediatric surgery fellow in Brazil, there was a law that if there were no intensive care unit beds, pediatric intensive care unit beds in the public hospitals, if we went in front of a judge and got a court order, we were allowed to transfer this patient to a private intensive care unit bed without the patient having to do any payment. Now, guess who had to go in front of the judge? The fellow. So one fellow had to stay in the hospital taking care of the sick patient. The other fellow would jump in our own car because the parents of the patients did not have car. With the parent next to us, we would drive, go in front of the judge, get the court order, go back to the hospital, then get the patient, put the patient in an ambulance. We would transfer the patient venting on a mask ambu to go to the private hospital. And as we are driving the patient very sick, we would tell the driver, can you please turn on the siren and just go through the red light? And then the driver will tell us, although this car looks like an ambulance, we are not registered in the government as an ambulance. So if I pass the red light, the hospital will get a ticket. So that's the difference of working in an underdeveloped country and working here. Now, the other perspective, and that's the disadvantage, this is a culture of work. Everybody works a lot, and the social life is not as intense as it was in Brazil, and I do miss that. Now, going into self-reflection, I think we all know our stories and we all know the struggles that we've been through. But it's our obligation to think, what can we do better for the next generation of female pediatric surgeons? So I think most of you know that I had twins. And in the United States, if you have a C-section, you are granted 8 weeks of maternity leave. My twins were born at 30 weeks. So at 38 weeks, when we were going back home, it was time for me to go back to work. So at that time, I talked to my boss because we used to schedule our surgery so in advance. I didn't have any surgery schedule because I was supposed to be delivering at that time. So I said, can I take 1 month of leave without payment? I just want to be with my babies. And I was denied. So I think now, whenever I am in a position to support parenthood, I will always do that. Now, the other self-reflection, and I talked to Dr. Carmen a little bit about that, but in Brazil, the vast majority of pediatric surgeons are females. Now, the vast majorities of chief of pediatric department surgeries in Brazil are males. And the question is, what can we do about this? And what are the numbers for WoEUPSA? Has this been published yet? And if not, this committee has homework to do. So I think every society of pediatric surgery should know their numbers. What is the percentage of women in WoEUPSA, for example? And then during the WoEUPSA meeting, the number of female speakers should match that percentage. Otherwise, the meeting is truly not representing the society composition. And the Women's Committee should have representation at the program committee to assure that this is happening. So I looked at the WoEUPSA website just to have some data. So out of 11 presidents, counting the current and future president, only one has been female, Dr. Giovanna Ricci Pettitoni, who was the other presenter in this series of talk. There has been 0 female Rabine medal, 0 female honorary members out of 16. There has been 2 out of 18 Duhamel lectures that were females, Dr. Claire Fekete, Dr. Marcela Bailes. 0 of the 17 European Congress lectures have been given by females, and 1 out of 7 European pediatric surgery lectures were given by female, Dr. Sabine Sarnacki. So what does that mean? It means an amazing opportunity for this group. Make a list of all the women, all the topics that they can talk about, nominate women for all those awards and all these lectures. That's how we make change. That's how we make progress. On the self-reflection, I had to look at myself, and I realized that since I took over the organization of the Penha course, there has been only guest speakers that were males. And then I now will make an effort to invite females for that role. So this year, the guest speaker will be Dr. Carla Santos. She is the Chief of Pediatric Surgery at Instituto Nacional de Pediatría in Mexico. She has been the #1 presenter for the monthly International Colorectal Web Meeting. That's a free meeting that Anyone can join, anyone can present their cases, and the amount of experience that she has is unbelievable. So I think she would make the amount of cases that she has makes any pediatric colorectal surgeon jealous. So the reality is she won this invitation because she deserves it. Now, I'm sure for this lecture series, you're all wonder about professional challenges. And if I had professional challenges, of course, who doesn't? But I truly believe that that's part of life. And as we all know, the one who survives is the one who adapts and move on. There are people that will hate you just because you exist. But remember, that is their problem, not yours. So I like to think in Brazil, we have a kid's toy that it's called Silly John. So you punch, there's a little weight in the base. So you punch it, it hits the floor and it comes back on. So I like to say that life is like that. It punches you and caresses you, punches you and caresses you. And that's just how it is. You have good news, bad news, challenges, success. That's how life is. So you have to understand that. Now, what has helped me during those challenge moments? Number one, you have to know your why. You have to know, why have I become a pediatric surgeon? So what gives me joy, fulfillment is to operate on my patients and to be in touch with them. So provided this is not taken away, everything will be fine. The other things are not that important. And the other very important portion for us as academic pediatric surgeons is teaching residents and fellows, because they are the next generations. So they are not involved in the politics. They are not involved in the problems that your department may have. They are desperate for people willing to teach them. So stay close to them. And this is a mutual relationship that benefits you and benefits them. Outside work, you have to have family, hobbies, good friends. It helps to have at least some people that you can trust at work, have good sleeping and exercise habits. And for Latin women, in my case, letting the emotion calm down, think strategically, then you can act. Don't react, wait. And I think what I have learned over the years is that it's very important for us to define what success means for you. And this is a very personal. If we ask the entire audience, what do you consider a successful pediatric surgeon? There will be multitude of answers, but you have to know what you consider success. And if you achieve, you celebrate. Don't expect that others will celebrate. Don't expect that your boss will come and say, Andrea, you're doing such a good job. Or that your colleagues will come and say, you are doing amazing. That just simply does not happen. So just remember, you define your success, you celebrate, and you'll be happy with that. And now I'm going to tell you another philosophy that I developed over time. And this helps with disappointment with people. So I grew up and I watched a movie. I don't know, you all are probably too young for that, that it's called Flipper. It was a movie about a dolphin, and it really gave the impression that dolphins and humans can be really good friends. So I always thought that I would be really connected with dolphins. They are pretty cute. So I went to Cuba in 2005. I was already an adult, but I finally had the money and the opportunity to swim with dolphins. And I was shocked to realize that dolphins, different than dogs, they obey commands, but they don't care about humans. They only care about receiving their fish. And when you listen about that story about me, Andrea, and the dolphins, you wonder who was wrong in this story. Was the dolphin wrong? No, the dolphin has always been the dolphin. The person that was wrong was Andrea, that thought that dolphins were like dog, right? So I think when we have disappointments with people, we have to realize that sometimes we had wrong expectations about that person, and we placed that person in a certain level that they didn't deserve, or in a certain place in our heart that they didn't deserve. So when you are disappointed with someone, take into consideration what was your wrong perception of that person and just adapt. Now you realize that the person is a dolphin, not a dog. The other perspective that I gained was in general surgery. In general surgery, we had a list of patients that were waiting for surgery. So I realized that there was a woman that had been waiting way longer than anybody else. And the reason was because she was a dangerous prisoner. So I decided to call the prison and I said, "Hi, I'm noticing that this person needs a surgery and I just want to know if she will really cause trouble while in the hospital. What are the measures that we have to take?" And then the police said, "Oh, absolutely not. She's a wonderful woman. She's a lovely human being." And I said, "Oh, okay." Said, "Yeah, she killed her ex-husband, but she's a lovely human being and she will cause absolutely no trouble in the hospital." So I said, "Okay, so let's bring her." I brought her in, I operated on her, and I testify she was a lovely human being. So it's very important to understand that humans are not 100% bad or 100% good. And someone that has been terrible with you may be very good with other people. So just take on that into account. And then the other portion, that's the heart that I think we should take into consideration. It's because medicine is desperate for humanity. And over time, the way we practice has changed. So in the past, the doctor would go into the patient's house. The doctor would interact with the entire family, understand the dynamics, look at the patient. And now we are practicing in a very cold environment. That's our hospitals nowadays. And most of the times we are looking at the screen and not even looking at the eye of the patient. So I think we have to bring back this into the practice of medicine, because the most important thing is in life is human connection. But in order for that to happen, we need an open heart and we need time. And in pediatric surgery, what truly brings joy to me is the interaction with my patients and my families. The job is hard. Having a complication is not easy, but what keeps us doing that is that human connection. So take advantage of that, because that's what fulfills us to continue as pediatric surgeons. And I once saw this about what's the difference between hell and heaven. And what they say is that everybody gets a very large spoon and the food is at the center of the table. So in hell, each person is trying to feed themselves and they all are frustrated and die of starvation. And in heaven, what happens is each person feeds each other. And that's how they thrive and survive. And when I think about what's the work environment that I want to be in heaven, in a place where we are supporting each other, where we are feeding each other, where we are celebrating each other and not competing against each other. So as Nelson Mandela said, it is in our hands to create a better world for all of us who live in. So, and I would add, for us, for our patients, and for our colleagues. So we have to do it. Now, regarding wisdom, I hope it will come with time, but I think we should all remember that what happens is not as important as how you react to what happens. So that's what I had for you today.
Andrea, thank you so much for this amazing talk. full of wisdom, full of warmth, and I think you hit it already, hit the nail in terms of our society and the work we have to do, and we are all for it. To really, next time when you come and take a look, that the numbers are gonna have changed also in our society. That's what we are here for. Thank you so much. Let's start with the chat and see what questions are coming to you.
At the
yes,
moment, everybody's celebrating you, Andrea. This was really, I have to agree with Elke. I'm touched. This was really a wonderful, wonderful presentation, and just try to write down some of your take-home messages. Like, it's not your problem, it's theirs. And don't react, wait. And define your success and celebrate. And this is really home messages I'm gonna take with me. Thank you so much.
So there will be, for all those ones that struggled writing all these pearls of wisdom down, there will be a recording, right, Gaia? We will gonna post it on YouTube on our channel, so you don't need to worry about that. There's a question I just see. Andrea, do you still ever feel that you are from abroad when working in the USA?
That's a very good question. I think when you leave your country, you miss your country a lot. But you don't realize also how you have changed over time. So I think it would be hard for me to actually go back and function in Brazil. So you end up saying that you are a world citizen. You feel that you're parts of all different places. So I think I have adapted well here, but yes, you don't feel like, oh, I'm an American. I may be in the paper, but I don't think you ever feel that way. But you also don't realize how much you have disadapt from your own country. So I think you become more a citizen of the world.
Thank you.
I totally agree. I think Elke and myself could very much relate with that part of your story, that you adapt to your new setting, but you're never at home really anywhere. I just have a question. I mean, if you could talk to your younger self, which advice would you give to yourself? Or is it anything you will do different? Or which advice will you give to yourself?
Let me think about that. I think we all just need to know that things will work out. Like I think we spend so much time worrying when we should not worry. I think over time, as you mature, then you reach that point that I don't need to worry. Like everything will be fine. I think when you are young, you worry too much about things that are truly not important. And I think having the perspective or talking to someone helps you to say, nothing big is happening here. Just wait. You'll be okay. I think that helps.
Yeah, that's related to a question from Jacqueline Nava from Mexico, because he writes in the chat, which advice would you give to a recent medical graduates who are passionate about pursuing a career in pediatric surgery? I think it would be...
Absolutely do it.
Go for it.
Cannot think of a best profession. And I am raising 2 kids, and all I want is that they are as passionate for what they choose to do as their parents are. I really enjoy my profession. I really enjoy taking care of patients. And I think, honestly, I think we're privileged, because if you look around other friends that are in other professions, I don't think they get the joy that we get.
Thank you, Andrea. I also, wanted to ask you, because you have such a busy clinical commitment. You travel a lot, and you have your family that is also your extended family that, you know, it's how do you, in terms of really like time management, if what would you advise somebody, you know, that feels really overwhelmed with all this and you know, mom guilt and you know, how do you have any philosophy also on that, how to you know, navigate that?
I do. And that I learned over time. Number one, you need help. You need help at home. So it's interesting. When I moved from Brazil, in Brazil, we all have maids that help with home. In the United States, we don't have that. You're on your own. So I think getting help for the basic things, for cleaning, is very important. So that takes off from your plate. When Alberto and I were working, we really needed someone living at the house because our hours are not completely predictable, and you leave very early, and if it's a snow day and the nanny cannot come, what do you do? So you need someone living. That's for the reality in the United States. And then having control of your calendar. So blocking your calendar for important days. For it's my kid's birthday, that day I'm blocked. Like nobody can touch that day. Being present, because I am specialized, I have the advantage that I don't take call. So I am on call for my patients, but I spend every night at home, every weekend at home. So when I'm there, I am there. I try to the best of my capacity to not take home work. So once I'm home, and take vacation. This philosophy in the United States to not take vacation, I am 100% wrong against it. You really have to take vacation. And it's the thing of the rooster that thinks that the sun only rises because of him. The same thing. If you die, the hospital will be just fine. Your family will not. So take vacation, take time for your friend, because you need this balance. When your family is struggling, the work helps. When the work is struggling, the family helps. So you need to have all those in balance. So I think vacation with family is something that it's sacred. You should not take time away to work.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Carmen, what do we have next?
Well, we have greetings from Bangladesh, Brazil, Bosnia, Pakistan, Italy, Spain, Mexico, Bolivia, California, Uzbekistan, Turkey, South Africa, Costa Rica, Romania, Algeria. I mean, these women at the WoEUPSA really, this is really a sign what women at the WoEUPSA is for. It's not only women at the WoEUPSA, it's women of pediatric surgical community in the world. So, I mean, I don't think people can really formulate questions. Everybody's just greeting Andrea, and everybody's so grateful about how much you share of yourself and your experience. So it's just overwhelming words on how inspiring you are and you have been during this webinar with us.
Absolutely.
So thank you
I
so
wanted
much.
to use this opportunity because, Andrea, you've been to so many meetings also in Europe, right? But you have that, you know, you're looking at Europe, never really worked there, but, you know, from what you can see in a meeting, what is sort of your observation? And I know you mentioned, you touched on it, but do you have a few more insights about how do you see Europe positioned in terms of, you know, females in pediatric surgery, and what else could be done to improve the visibility?
Yes. So I would think Europe in general, we from outside see with lots of respect. Smaller countries, highly educated people, better work-life balance. So I don't know if you ever heard a joke about how people send emails when they are away for work. So in the United States, the person said, I'm sorry, I'm going to be 2 hours away because I'm getting a kidney transplant. But from the recovery room, I'm going to start answering emails. And in Europe I'm away from the summer. If you really want to talk to me, send an email again in 3 months. And also I think someone mentioned that in United States meetings are usually held during the weekend, so we don't miss work. And in Europe is usually held during the week, so you don't miss the weekend. So I think that speaks highly of the culture, and there are no perfect place. When I compare United States with South America, I always say the ideal world would be mixing and dividing by 2, because then you will have the perfect balance. So I don't think there is a perfect place, but we can learn from each culture and bring what is the best on each place. Now, what women can do a lot. And I think this supporting each other, promoting each other, this initiative is so powerful, just to take the blind spots, because as I mentioned, I myself was not inviting women when I had the power to invite. So sometimes it's just that blind side that we need to look and say, there are so many good women. Why am I not inviting them?
Yeah, this unconscious bias that we all carry, that we have to be aware of and help each other to come over it. So yeah, I agree with you.
Well, we could talk about it for a long, long time,
Yes.
and we definitely are looking forward to have a meeting also with you soon at the next meetings in private to discuss more. But I want to say on behalf of WoEUPSA, on behalf of all the women in WoEUPSA, all the men in WoEUPSA, thank you so much for your time and for sharing really such deep insights that will really help shaping the future of our organization. Thank you so much, and hope to see you soon in person again.
Yes, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.